Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to be talking about and discussing the issues of upgrading older motherboards and some newer motherboards to the new Ryzen 3000 series. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, first of all, let's get the mentions out of the way. So this was by CR1318 over on Reddit, and also this was recommended to me by C McKnight and also Glenn ALZ81 from our Discord forum, which there'll be links to in the description below. Also there'll be links also from where we've actually got this spreadsheet, which essentially is going to help us break down the power requirements for the new Ryzen 3000 series and how well it's going to favour your motherboard. So whether you're looking at B350, B450, X370, X470, or maybe even the new X570 boards. First of all, let's break it down a little bit. So we've grouped these motherboards, or say the user or the original creator has grouped these into 4 different groups. So we've got the 200 amp group, the 150 amp group, 100 amp group, and 75 amp group. Now these have both been split down into overclocked requirements and also stock requirements. So take that into consideration when you see the spreadsheet. And again, the spreadsheet will be linked in the description below, so you can check out for yourself at your own leisure. Also, I will be going through the motherboards vendor by vendor, subsection by subsection. So we'll be starting with the X570 group, then we'll be looking at the X470/B450 group, and then after that we'll be looking at the older boards, the X370 and the B350s. We won't be covering the A320s in this particular roundup, purely because the A320, in most cases, people generally won't recommend, and certainly for the newer chips and for overclocking purposes, those boards don't really have any relevance within this review. So another thing to look out for in this particular video, we'll be looking at a few manufacturers of motherboards. So if your motherboard isn't listed for any reason, that is because it hasn't been tested or isn't available. Obviously the user who has originally created this spreadsheet for us to go through has a limited section of boards that you can actually check and has had contact with, all that kind of stuff, or knows the specifications of. So we'll be looking predominantly at ASRock, we'll be looking at Asus, we'll be looking at BioStar, we'll also be looking at Gigabyte and MSI. So unfortunately, if your boards are not within that group, then you're not going to be covered in this video, so you can stop watching right about now. Now also what we will be doing is, although this is a lengthy intro, we will actually be putting timestamps in the video description below. So if you're looking for a particular motherboard or a particular subset of motherboards, then you can click on the links in the description below and you can fast forward to those parts. So that's that out of the way, let's go over to the computer and look at the spreadsheet and we'll go through it. So for a quick start, here we are. This is the link that was on Linus Tech Tips forum and explaining the AM4 vCore VRM ratings, all that kind of stuff. Now this is going to be purely for VRM ratings. We're not going to go into individual chips and compatibility BIOS level wise. That is going to be down to the individual manufacturers. So obviously do check those BIOSes to see if your chosen chip is supported. This is purely going to be based on your power requirements or the power requirements that we expect those chips to be needing or wanting for overclocking or for stock speeds. Again, all the links for this will be in the description below. So let's have a look at the actual spreadsheet itself. So as I said, this is the AM4 vCore VRM ratings. This is version 1.1. So if you're watching this video and you're clicking on the links, you may see a slightly different version. This was updated on the 2nd of July. Obviously the chips have now been released on the 7th, so some of this information will be updated shortly, but keep an eye on the links, and if there's any updates, obviously CR1318 will be updating. Okay, so let's look at the legend at the top of all. So the main thing we're looking at here is the legend. So if it's got a green tick, the board's fine for the specific chip you're looking at. If you've got a amber warning with a little star, then that means the VRMs are going to want some airflow or are kind of borderline whether or not it's going to be good for overclocking or not. So again, that is going to be where you're on the sort of tipping point, do you, don't you? If you've got a red box with a cross in it, then this is definitely not recommended. Or if you've got a grey box with a line in it, then this is a board that has not been evaluated, so there is no specific judgment one way or the other. Now, as I said, there are some other links here to the Reddit threads and where the actual references for a lot of this come from for the user. So again, I strongly suggest you check out if you possibly can. And don't forget to leave good comments, etc., on Reddit for this user or on Discord. So let's look at the chip. So on this side here, we've got the 3950X, this is the OC version. So this is going to be potentially using up to 200 amps of core current. We've got the 3900X, OC'd 150 amps. And underneath there, we've got the stock 3950X, which again is going to be around about the 150 amps. Now these are kind of rough guesses of the amperage which is going to be needed for these chips. So obviously this may change slightly, and they may require slightly more than that, they may require slightly less than that. So again, this is based on estimated VRM amperage usage or ratings. So we've got the 3900X and 3700X in the OC in the 100 amp bracket, and the stock 3900X. So basically the OC bracket takes it up another 50 amps essentially. That's how we're kind of looking at this at the moment. So stock figures 75 amps, then jumps to 100 amps overclocked. You get the general idea. Here we've got the core currents, and on this side here we've got the V cores. So you've got the phases that are actually on the board, so VRM phases, the doublers that are being used, the high side FETs, low side FETs, and another part of this which has actually been added recently, along with actually the form factor, which is over on this side. We've also got the option for BIOS flashback without a CPU. Now obviously if you are going to be getting an upgraded CPU, it is certainly worth flashing the BIOS before you start, if at all possible, but some motherboards now will be featuring BIOS flashback. So you can flash a BIOS without a CPU, and in some cases without RAM either. Okay, so that is a brief introduction, well, sort of brief. So first of all, let's take a look at the X570 boards. So this is the preliminary release of boards that we know that are going to be out. And so we've got ASRock at the top here. So as you can see, pretty much all the boards here were all in green. So whether you're going to be going for an OC or whether you're keeping stock, you should be absolutely fine with the models that are listed here. Now, as you can see, most of these are using a 6-phase with a doubler. So they look to be very good. Now there is actually a slight caveat on this. The micro ITX boards have all been put into the not recommended section, purely for the reason that although they may well be using the same phases and the same doublers, all that kind of stuff, the technology is the same. Because of their cramped style, cramped nature, and smaller heat sinks in general on VRMs, they are kind of in the not recommended zone for OC. But for stock purposes, then most CPUs, Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, you should be fine. Again, refer to your manufacturer for full details on that, but I just thought I'd mention that. Most of the boards here are going to be micro ATX, ATX, and extended ATX. So ASRock, ASUS, BioStar, and Gigabyte all have a fantastic showing, and all bar one, which is the Gigabyte X570 Gaming X, which has a additional or a potential additional airflow requirement on that particular board if you're looking at going to overclock on the 3950X. Again, with all the other chips in their stock configuration or even OC configuration, no problems whatsoever. And you can see on the listing here, this is possibly because of the 5-phase VRM design rather than 6 phases as used on some of the other boards. So again, phases are something to look into, and obviously the more phases you've got, hopefully the more chance you've got of getting that good OC. So moving down through, we've got MSI in a similar position, but a couple of other boards there just falling short of the mark. So that's the MPG X570 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi and the MPG X570 Gaming Plus, both of which not recommended for the 3950X with an overclock without some additional cooling, or they're going to be kind of borderline depending on ambient temperatures and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so X570 are probably not the reason why you're here. Most of you are going to be here because you've got an older X470 board, a B450, or even a X370 or B350. So ASRock, as we can see from this listing, so this is the B450s at the top, and then we're going to move down later into the X470s. So actually not too bad a showing overall. Pretty much most chips are going to be okay, even with an overclock, even up to the 3900X. If you've got a little bit of additional cooling, the one to watch out for, as we can see here by all this red, and the borderline is the B450M HDV R4. Now that is obviously, it's a low-end board. It was never designed to be taking this much kind of current from the VRMs. It was originally designed for lower-end chips, maybe things like your Ryzen 3s, Ryzen 5s, even the Ryzen 7s, the early releases were pretty much borderline on that board anyway, so that is pretty much carried on with the 3000 series. So definitely that is one to watch out for if you are owner of that board. But most of the other boards actually not a bad showing at all, and if you're lucky enough to have the X470 Tai Chi Ultimate, then actually even with a overclock on the 3950X, things are looking good for you. But again, this is reflected, as we can see now, in the phases. So you've got a 6-phase with a doubler, so that is possibly the best board of the range as power requirements go, and with phases and all that kind of stuff. So that is the, if you've got that board, then things are going to be great for you. If you haven't got that board, if you've got, say, one of the Fatality boards, which I've actually been very fond of, the B450 Gaming K4, which is a fantastic board, and I've actually got the Fatality B450 Gaming ITX, as you've seen possibly in a review, which is over here or over here. Again, that was a mini ITX board, so 3950X is probably going to be out of the question anyway. But it's stock. We can probably get away with 3900X, 3700X with an overclock. Stock 3900X is doable. 100 amps and 75 amps are not going to be too much of a problem with there. With anything, more airflow is going to be better, and it's going to give you more chance of using the chips. Again, this does come down to the BIOS. So you will need BIOS support, as well as obviously the VRM support or potential VRM support. So moving down to ASUS, similar sort of situation here. So some of the ASUS boards, like the ROG Strix X470F Gaming, is at a fantastic showing. Obviously the ROG Crosshair 7 is going to be amongst the top of the boards there. That has got some great phases, good doublers. It's a decent power stage, 60 amps on there, so you would expect that to do very well for all the chips. Obviously some of the other boards, like the Prime B450 budget board, using only 4 phases, it is going to struggle with the higher end chips. But again, it is a budget board. If you've got a budget board, it's unlikely, or it would be not a great idea to go for a 3950X. It just doesn't make sense. Ideally, you want to have a decent quality motherboard with decent VRMs, decent stability and all that kind of stuff. But again, if you're looking at a stock 3900X, 3800X, 3700X, or maybe something a little bit lower down the line, then you shouldn't have any problems whatsoever. And that goes for pretty much most of the ASUS range, again, apart from some of the Prime boards, especially the Micro ATX ones, which are limited on both size, space and VRM cooling. The tough boards have a relatively good show in there. For the B450s, BioStore, not many boards. Generally, people tend to think of BioStar as being the kind of a budget board, and again, that is reflected looking at the phases. Mostly 4-phase boards. They're not the greatest of boards, and they have had bad reputation in the past. But again, if you've got a BioStore board and you're looking to put one of these chips on, again, you're in a similar position as the lower end ASUS boards. Moving on to Gigabyte. Gigabyte has a similar showing again, so B450 wise and X470 wise, actually not too bad a showing. Some of the B450 Aorus Pros I would have expected to do a little bit better, but again, not the end of the world. You can still put on a stock 3900X and not experience any problems. You could possibly still get a mild overclock on some of these boards again, but an aggressive overclock is probably going to be out of the question for the 3900X and obviously the 3950X also. MSI, going down a bit further, we've got actually again a pretty good showing, especially for the X470s, B450s, especially the higher end boards. There's a lot of green there. Unfortunately, as we go further down the list, with boards like your VDHs or your M2s, those not done very well at all. We've got again a bit of red there, not the best of showings, and we've got the Mini ITX, the B450i Gaming Plus AC, which is actually a very popular board. Not done too bad at all. Looking at a 150 amp core current on there, so an overclock on the 3900X going to be achievable. That is a pretty good showing, especially for a Mini ITX board. Okay, so now we're moving down onto some of the older boards. So now we're looking X370, B350. Yeah, this isn't going to be such good news for you if you're looking to go to these newer chips. And again, these boards now, you're looking probably 2, maybe 3 years old on some of these boards. So when they were released AMD probably didn't know where they were going, where they were headed, and certainly the motherboard manufacturers probably didn't either. So most of these boards now are tending to be budget boards, and as we can see by the phases, the earlier boards were down to a 3-phase design on most boards. There's a couple of 4s in there, and some high-end boards, obviously like the Fatality X370 Professional Gaming. You've got a 6-phase VRM there, with a doubler as well, so that is going to be, if you're an owner of one of those, then you're going to be in luck, and you can put in there pretty much anything you like. Looking back at some of the boards which we've seen on the channel, actually review-wise, so the AB350 Gaming ITX AC, again, not unreasonable to expect a stock configuration 3950X with a little bit of additional cooling. Again, the AB350M boards, I personally have always found this to be really good. Not always the best overclockers, but certainly value for money wise. There's some of the boards that haven't been tested, which is a little bit of a shame. The AB350M Pro 4, which again is quite a popular board. We've got no information on that at the moment, but again, do check back. This hopefully will be updated by the original creator. Moving down to some of the other boards, which actually I would have expected to do well. The Fatality brand from ASRock is generally the kind of slightly higher end boards, apart from the Tai Chis. So the Fatalities of the AB350 and the X370s all had a pretty good outing here. So again, stock configuration 3950X with a little bit of extra cooling, not going to be a problem. Stock 3900X or an OC 3800X, 3700X, not a problem at all. We've got a little bit of green there, so we should be all good. Obviously, again, the Tai Chi board, X370 Tai Chi, fantastic, VRMs, phases, doublers, etc. So that isn't going to be a problem at all, and it's going to be in good stead. Obviously, you're not going to get some of the extra features from the chip, such as the PCI Express 4 support, all that kind of stuff. Realistically, nothing really saturates the PCI Express 3 bus at the moment, so if you've still got that board, is it worth investing in a more expensive modern board at X570 at the moment? If you've got the money, why not? But if not, we're looking at a good way to upgrade. So going down a little bit further, so now we've got the Asus B350 board. So again, similar sort of situation as the ASRock's. So the B350s, the lower end boards, are going to struggle with some of the chips, 3900, the 3950Xs. Again, 150 amp core current is going to be pushing these boards a little bit further than they would like to go. Some of these boards got some actually pretty decent phases. You've got a 4-phase design as opposed to the 3-phase design on some of the other boards we saw from ASRock just now. Yeah, what can you say? So if you've got an ROG board, a Crosshair 6, or maybe like me, you've got the Prime X370 and the Prime X370 Pro, actually not done too badly. So apart from a severe overclock on the 3950X, everything else pretty much you're good to go, which again, those sort of price boards run about the sort of 80, 90 pounds mark now. If you bought one back then, probably about 150. So actually you could still get a little bit of a usable life out of it, especially with these new modern chips. Going down to BioStar, so some of the BioStar boards, again, we've got quite a lot of red here. Similar situation again, 4 phases. Yeah, I'm not going to go too far into the BioStar boards. I don't think there's a great deal of them on the market. Again, if you want to take a closer look at this, you can do, but you can see all the details there. We've got quite a lot of red. Fine for 3600X, 3600s, overclocked, and a 3800 or 3700X in its stock configuration. If you want to go anything above that, then additional cooling is going to be required. If you want to go higher again, the 3900 series, then it isn't recommended. Unless obviously you've got the Ryzen X370 GT7, in which has got the 4-phase with a doubler and a 60 amp power stage, so you should be good to go with that board. Moving down to Gigabyte, so Gigabyte is a similar outing, same sort of deal really. It's going on. Most of the manufacturers are having exactly the same thing with the AB350s and AB350Ms, whereas the 3950X overclocked is going to be a push too far. Some of the boards managing an overclock on the 3900X, and its stock configurations with 3900X and the 3900 we're borderline needing extra cooling. Obviously extra cooling is always a good thing to have anyway. Some of the boards like the DS2 and DS3H, again, very much budget boards. Are you going to be wanting to spend that sort of money on a chip to go with that kind of board? Realistically, I think you're going to be in the 3600X, 3600, probably is going to be about your ceiling on that board, I would think. Some of the Aorus boards a bit further down, managing to push things a little bit further. Again, extra phases mean extra power, or at least potentially extra power, so that is another thing to look at. If your board isn't listed on here, but you do know how many phases you've got, or you do know which doubler you're using, or what FETs you're using, if you can match those up with what is in the list here, that will give you a good idea of what is achievable with your particular setup. Obviously, this isn't a golden rule for all boards or for all FETs, but it certainly is going to give you a kind of a push in the right direction to know what is achievable. So MSI with the B350s and X370s, again, very similar. Again, if you're looking at a 4-6 phase board, you're going to be doing pretty well. The 3-phase boards, extra cooling, 3900X at stock, an overclocked 3800X or 3700X is going to be achievable. 3900 series, again, if you're on that kind of budget board, are you going to be spending that kind of money on a chip? It's unlikely, so I don't think it's any great loss that you can't use them or it's not recommended. Obviously, there's going to be some of you out there who are going to give it a go and see what you can do. It may well work, but you'll probably find that you're going to find limitations where it will overclock to a certain point or it's usable to a certain point, but you're not going to get the performance that the chip is designed to give you, especially with a better current or better VRMs. So that pretty much wraps up all the motherboards on there. I'll say if you want to see these in any closer detail, I will be putting links in the description below so you can check out for yourself at your own leisure. There will be timestamps in the video, but then if you've got to this far in the video, then the timestamps are pretty much irrelevant. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. Like I said, we've had a look at some of the capabilities of some of the boards. If your board isn't listed here, do let me know in the comments below, and if you know your VRM types and your FET type, again, you may well be able to match it up with a similar board to get an approximation of what you may or may not need to do or what you can actually achieve. So hopefully this video has been interesting for you. If it has, give the video a like and don't forget to click on the subscribe button for more content like this. But in the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.